James is a huge Carly Rae. Oh my God! A bird just hit.
We are the least professional human beings on earth.
I'm sorry. Anyway. Peep the fit. You like it? Hope you do. Available at semlermusic.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I am Jen, and this is Fundy Fridays. And here on my channel, I talk about different aspects of Christian fundamentalism, American conservative politics, pop culture, and gay stuff. And you know what? I have a guest here today that kind of fits in all those different categories, or at least touches on those different categories. So that's interesting and fun. And of course, the way that I do my camera, you can't see my shirt, so just wanted to show that off for you. Today is kind of a bonus episode in the Vacation Bible School of Rock series. This is a large part of my interview with Semler, and I will tell you that even more of it is going to be available on Patreon. It's not anything crazy. It's just stuff that didn't fit in this episode's narrative. You know, I'm all about video essay bullshit and pedantery. Is that even a word? Anyway, if you haven't seen my Vacation Bible School of Rock, I highly, highly recommend it. And no, you don't even have to watch them in any certain order. Please, just watch it. Anyway, if you had seen the most recent one, you'll know that I kind of concluded with Semler being like the new face of CCM, in my opinion. A little more like deconstruction punk rock side of things, but you know what I mean. Today we are taking an even closer look at Semler, the queer Christian genre hopping rock star that is taking the world of CCM by storm. And I mean that wholeheartedly. They have literally been to the #1 of the Christian charts 3 times now. So, pretty big deal. Semler, of course, is the kind of pen name of Grace Baldridge, who you may have seen on the internet before. They're a pretty cool and fun person. But that is their legal name. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to call them Semler, and they use all pronouns, but I like to use they, so that's how it's going to go down in today's episode. So Semler was born on November 12th, 1990, and I looked it up, and that makes them a Scorpio, and I will say I'm not very familiar with that sign, but I definitely have heard that you're not supposed to piss them off. So anyway, and they are originally from South Carolina, but then moved to Belgium with their family, and I did not know that when I was researching, so I definitely had to ask them what it was like growing up in Europe while the rest of us were here in the land of the free and the home of the Whopper. So from the articles I read, it says you're from Delaware, but you lived in Belgium. Mm-hmm. I mean, how long was that? Was that your whole life, or?
Yeah, pretty
cool.
much.
Do you feel like Europe had any particular effect on you? Do you say, what do you feel like it did to you? What do you feel like you brought back to the States from Europe? Obviously, you're not there anymore.
So my parents are American. We moved around a bunch in my early life. I was born in South Carolina, but we moved to Belgium from Delaware when I was quite young. And we stayed in Belgium until like a year after I graduated from high school. So my parents still lived in Belgium when I was having my freshman year, which was a real train wreck. So it was awesome to have them across the ocean. And I think that growing up in Belgium was like a huge saving grace for me, given what eventually I would go through as a queer person raised in a rectory, like growing up in the church, because Belgium and a lot of Europe has a pretty strict separation of church and state. We would refer to it as a very secular country. That's how I remember thinking of it. And so I think that I knew that there was something else, and that there were different ways of being from growing up in Belgium. I also went to an international school where there were a lot of different cultures present and represented, but I still grew up in a really Christian household. And I was still, being sent to like youth groups and mission trips and projects and things like that. So Belgium, and I also think my dad being part of a very ultimately affirming denomination allowed me to kind of process and work through things at a pace that ultimately is like kind of fast, even though I'm still going through it. I just feel like I had some framework or understanding that this wasn't the only thing there was. And I think growing up internationally contributed to that significantly.
Notably, it seems that Semler has a fantastic relationship with their parents, which is amazing. Love that. Wish I knew what that was like. And you can really see this love and support come through in their various TikToks and other little social media postings. Semler's dad is so cute. I mean, I've never talked to him, but I just love seeing him on social media. Here's a cute little TikTok with sound removed, talking about the various different things that Reverend Baldridge was doing for Semler on tour. So cute. Semler's father is a Episcopalian priest, which is really fucking cool. And I don't know anything about that denomination, especially because in America we have a lot of Baptist and non-denominational megachurch types. So I had to ask, what even is this religion? So your dad is a Episcopalian priest? Is that what they're
He is
called?
an Episcopal priest, the Reverend Baldridge.
I mean, I know a little bit about being
Ooh,
a reverend.
that's got kind of an 1800s ring to it. The Reverend
I know.
Baldridge.
It does sound like cool. So I don't know anything about that denomination.
It's well, so the church that I grew up in was Anglican, which is I think just the UK version of Episcopal. Episcopal is what the denomination is in the United States. If I'm butchering this, if someone knows the history of this denomination, but that's the
Whatever.
history. That's the denomination that I grew up in, and yes, it is very affirming and it's very inclusive. But when I was growing up, it was more of a culture of don't ask, don't tell. It's a lot of things that are not, quote unquote appropriate to talk about. So I never saw my dad preach hate from the pulpit. I never experienced that.
And then something interesting that they were talking about was that even though they grew up with supportive, progressive parents at home, that did not shield them from evangelical homophobia because they were feeling that even in Europe.
I was going to evangelical youth groups, Young
Mm-hmm.
Life and things like that. And those groups are not shy to share what their opinion of a Christian worldview would be on queer people, among so many other social conversations. And I think I started filling in the blanks of that must be what we believe because I wasn't hearing a counter to that at my home church. And I think that's something I want to encourage people to do is that the people who are preaching hate against us are really quick to be loud. They're really pretty brazen with their beliefs.
Semler's complex background is one of the reasons I think that their music is so interesting and layered and raw and just really complex. Either way, Semler graduated from high school in Belgium and then came back to America to attend Elon University in North Carolina, specifically with a degree in communications, not journalism. I'm sorry. That's that journalism degree.
So I got
You
nothing to
said
add
the
to that
things
one.
that I was trying to say but could not get out of my mouth.
I could add stuff to anything
I don't
anybody
have a
says.
journalism degree. I have
What do
like
you
a
have?
communications. I have a degree in like media arts and entertainment.
They would soon take to hosting and content creation like a moth to a flame. Just kidding, but they did work for some media conglomerates that you may have heard of, such as BuzzFeed and Refinery29, which is where I first learned about them. If you haven't already, you definitely need to check out State of Grace, which is a 10-episode series that Semler did, obviously under a different name, covering a broad scope of Christian-adjacent American social topics. Everything from guns to conversion therapy to the dark side of contemporary Christian music. It is a fascinating series that has had a profound impact on me and the channel and many, many others. This series is so amazing that one episode was even nominated for a GLAAD award. The reason why I bring up Semler's background is because it's relevant. I really admire the way that Semler is able to bring us these incredible musical tales of forlorn faith to life, with such richness and understanding. Even earlier in their career, Semler was digging deep into the overlap between Christian faith and American culture, rooting out the rich complexities and dangerous idiosyncrasies that exist therein, and providing a rich foundation for their later music. And this series would actually end up being a catalyst for Semler's own jump into the world of CCM. While working on an episode that was ironically covering the seedy underbelly of the Christian music industry, Semler reports finding themselves particularly disillusioned with the genre as a whole and just how many people it was leaving behind.
I'm curious, how do you think that line of work that you were in, how did that influence the music you would later make? Because I can't help but feel like they're playing into each other somehow.
That was a weird thing. I remember after I released Preacher's Kid, going on like a dog walk with my wife and kind of reflecting on how State of Grace and the last episode that we filmed before lockdowns in Los Angeles was about Christian music.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always written songs, I've always written music. It's a way that I process my feelings, but I never got very personal with my music, at least not the stuff that I was sharing, because I was really nervous on what was on the other side of that. And you kind of make this silent agreement to not ruffle the feathers of faith and religion. It's not cool. It's not like a sexy subject matter to write a song about. And so I really just didn't want to touch it. I didn't know what it would open up for me. And so we started doing the doc series because I was realizing that all the general queer phobia that I was dealing with in my life at that time all was tying back to religion. It was just always this root issue. Even people that wouldn't describe themselves as especially religious, or that I would think of as especially religious, if they were holding certain beliefs and values, it just was always going back to some sort of, maybe their parent was deeply religious and ingrained those values into them. And so I wanted to kick the tires on that. And I knew that I've always been interested in religion and faith because of my upbringing. So we started doing the show, and it just really opened up a lot of questions for me. And of course, when I'm in that season or moment of confusion and needing to sort through my thoughts, I would always just start writing music. And especially after the CCM episode, I just felt really inspired and kind of like this whirlwind of information that I was needing to process. And then we were, all shut down, production totally shut down for the show. And I was writing a lot of songs, and I was going through things in my personal life that I was like, I didn't really think about a lot of people listening to Preacher's Kid. I had to get it out of my system. I was starting to find the ex-evangelical hashtags. I was seeing more and more creators that were talking about this subject. It just felt as though I was ready to kind of throw my hat into the ring. I wanted to participate in these discussions in a way that felt true to me, which at that time was through songwriting and through comedy as well, through like little short form TikTok songs that I'll do. And it really felt totally like it was like, I don't want to say it was easy, because it actually brought up a lot of unpleasantness, but it wasn't I wasn't wrestling to try and write lyrics. Like that was just coming pretty freely. It was like the aftermath that I needed to deal with. And when we were on this dog walk after I released Preacher's Kid, I remember turning to Lizzie and being like, wait a second, like, I know I'm going to sound again like a youth pastor, but like, was the hand of God being like, yes, and then the last episode will be about CCM, and then you'll be alone in your house and with you and guitars. And then like, it just felt so, everything just like felt very, like it fell into place in such a way that I couldn't help but look at the bizarre beauty of it all. And I'm thankful for that. And so, yeah, the show absolutely influenced my songwriting. I think it helped get me ready. It helped prime me for some of the subjects I was going to need to grapple with in a more intimate way, which is songwriting.
And obviously, if you end up watching the episode of State of Grace that we're talking about, it's really funny because Semler makes a couple of worship songs in that episode, and it's really cute and it's funny.
And we will praise you, oh Holy Father, and we adore you.
Unfortunately, State of Grace ended when the pandemic began, a familiar tale for a lot of you, I'm sure. So like the rest of us, Semler had a lot of time on their hand, but instead of making bread, they made several EPs, so we're going to talk about that now. Recording on their home USB microphone and laptop, Semler put together the now iconic EP Preacher's Kid and bestowed it upon the world on February 5th, 2021. And after mulling the decision over and receiving some encouragement from their supportive and super wonderful wife, Lizzie, Semler made the bold decision to release the album specifically as a Christian album and marketing it as such. This lines up with their approach to making music as a Christian artist and wanting to sonically explore themes of faith on their own terms. I'm really glad that you insist on making this saying this is a Christian music.
Yes.
That you belong on those charts, you belong on K-Love, like you belong in this community, because you have some songs about love and some songs about like the queer experience and some about God, and sometimes they're all together. And I just really appreciate that, as opposed to like, not that there's anything wrong with our God is an awesome God, but like sometimes you really have shit you want to talk about. I don't know about this, but like the experience of like when you're mad at God and when you're trying to work something out or you're trying to figure something out, like why can't there be music about that? Why does it solely have to just be praise, worship and prayer?
Well, I think also that there's a lot of the Bible is filled with complicated human experiences. That's not just praise and worship. There's a lot of lament and anger and violence. And there is a lot of joy and gratitude as well. But I think it's disingenuous to say that the Bible only expresses praise and worship towards God. And so why should we have the same expectation with our Christian music? I think that a belief in God and doesn't exist in this vacuum. There are all these influences that play into whether a person is has faith or does not. And I think that to explore all those factors is really interesting and amazing. And I think there are a lot of artists doing it. I'm part of that as well. I don't think that every single song I release would be a Christian song, but I think a lot of them do come from that place and should be just as valid for a place in Christian music.
Semler wants to show that the process of accepting queer identity can enhance faith just as much as it can destroy it.
I only was able to like really explore my faith fully when I stopped performing the role of a good Christian girl for other people, because I realized that was actually not for God at all. It was literally just for people at coffee hour. And I feel so free and to be able to explore my own sense of belief and purpose without the burden of the eyeballs and judgment of other people. I really feel free of that now. And it's amazing too how once I took that from myself, that then you don't project it onto other people. That's another freedom. Is I feel like I was like, some of my like mean jokes and really just not my healthiest in a very literal sense. Like I really struggled with a lot of issues that I think it was because keeping myself a secret from my loved ones was just keeping me sick. It was just really like there was just like everywhere in my body. It was physical and it was emotional and it was spiritual and it just was comprehensive. And once I started to get free of that, it was amazing how my world opened up. And it was a process of a long time. It was not like I came out at Thanksgiving and I was like, I'm actually really good now. Like it's a lot of stuff to work through, and I'll be going through it my whole life, but I'm just thankful to at least feel more stable these days than I ever even imagined for myself.
They also gave us a little more insight into their motivations as a Christian artist and nuanced view of Christianity in our interview.
I push back against the idea that it's more positive for a person to retain their faith. I think that if there is a God who I believe in, that God can carry our doubt, our lack of belief, our faith, all of that would mean that is truly a divine, massive, huge mysterious creator. So the idea that like somehow like don't worry guys, Semler still has faith, even though that is the point that I'm at, that that's somehow better than an atheist or a person who believes differently or is raised in a different religious tradition. I don't believe that at all, you know. Just that like wherever you find yourself, where I've come to arrive is like wherever you find yourself, that you're all right. Like it's okay to be who you are and to find belief or the a lack thereof wherever that is. I just think that there needs to be within Christian music a pluralism of experience and of belief. Because even the Christians that are sitting next to each other, even the quote unquote good Christians who are sitting next to each other on the charts right now in CCM, don't all subscribe to the same belief system. They're not all going to the same church. So you're saying that there's a degree of variation that's allowed, but then when an artist like myself or, you know, Flamey Grant or Jennifer Knapp or other artists who have deconstructed Derek Webb, whatever, that somehow, no, that's a step too far. If the genre is Christian music and I'm talking about my experience in the Christian tradition and my faith, then there should be a place for it. There should be a place for all of that. And that we believe in a God that can handle all of that perspective.
Semler didn't just set out to make excellent queer-affirming CCM. They also wanted to get that music out to as many ears as possible, and to expand the boundaries of what one could even call Christian music. So they promoted the hell out of their EP, releasing it on every streaming platform known to humankind, and creating a series of TikTok videos to help build traction.
It's on Spotify, right there. That's me, I'm Semler. Semler is me. It's my middle name, and I like going by it because it has family history and it's non-gendered, so check. I also just wanted to say thanks so much for the kind words about Jesus from Texas. It's crazy because I like was really hesitant to put that song out, even as a demo, and wouldn't you know that it's like kind of my main source of inspiration right now as I finish up this EP, which I know I've been talking about forever, but I swear, like I'm working on it. I'm so close. I have like 1.5 songs left. And then it is out into the world, and hopefully when the time is right, I'm really gonna need your help as an independent artist. I'm doing all of this with my fucking Yeti mic. I'm gonna need your help to promote it. I really believe in the songs I've been writing, and I really am hopeful for all that is to come. But thank you so much for listening. It means a great deal.
And on February 10th, just 5 days after Preacher's Kid hit the proverbial shelves, it managed to do something that almost no one had been able to do for about 3 years at the time. Take down the titan that is Lauren Daigle. And if you haven't heard that name, you probably haven't seen the last episode of Vacation Bible School of Rock, and in that case, what is wrong with you? But if you do know who that is, then you know that this is a huge fucking deal. And not just knocking Lauren Daigle off the charts, who had been there for years, but a 5-day-old Christian album that had parental advisory on it and was made by an unapologetically queer and gender non-conforming person. What?
Hello and good morning to my esteemed colleagues in the LGBTQ+ community. For 2 days now, there has been a chaotic homosexual at the top of the Christian music charts. It is me. I am that chaotic homosexual. You're listening to my song, Jesus from Texas, right now.
A visionary and overachiever such as Semler could simply not be content with just one victory. So in October of 2021, Late Bloomer knocked off Lauren Daigle once again. Well, hot damn, God sure is good. Well, that or he was tired of Look Up Child. Either way, a win is a win. Reminder once again that Semler is an independent artist, and all of this was done just out of pure talent and hard work. Speaking of Late Bloomer, here is James talking to Semler about his favorite song off of that album, Prodigal Girl.
What do you say to your mom and your dad when they ask why I'm not in your story? What do you tell to your brothers and friends? Do they wonder why you still ignore me? Is it 'cause I left? Is it 'cause you stayed? Is it 'cause I'm gay? Is it 'cause you pray? Do you even try?
Prodigal Girl was the other one.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, and I love that just because I always have those thoughts too of like, what are they saying about me? What are they, how do you tell people? I used to go to these lock-ins. I used to go to these church events. I was your fun atheist friend that everybody tried to convert and it never worked, but I got to have some snacks. Like, they know me and all of a sudden I stopped coming. What's the situation? What do they think of me?
I think the truth, a few things. I think that most often people don't talk about us as much as we think that they do. And I also think that within those communities and within those circles, that when there's a disruption, like someone is leaving and maybe it's unpleasant, that is really swept under the rug. So after I wrote that song and talked about it with a few different people, I kind of came to the conclusion that I don't really think I come up. I know I've heard from a few people on the occasions that I have been brought up, but I think for the most part, because it's pretty shameful and unpleasant, even to hold the perspective of being right. Like it's still something, because they view being gay or queer as something taboo and inappropriate, that like you wouldn't even want to talk about it. You wouldn't even want to say that. You wouldn't even want to say they're gay. They're like, oh, Grace just changed a lot, is how it would be.
Mm-hmm.
We grew apart, things like that. So I think that's what I learned from that song. But it's so, losing people has been very difficult for me, and losing the living is the worst, because it just feels like people are still so close, and I'm just, my personality is always like bent towards hope, and I'm always just like hoping that things would change. And that's just with a few different situations I have going on. And the interesting thing is, as soon as I started writing about it, it's like I really like, when you like kick up stuff on the sea floor and it's like all like murky, that's kind of the spot that I've found myself in now. I feel like I kicked up a lot of stuff, but I'm happy that I did, because I know that eventually the dust will settle and there will be clarity again. And it was like a necessary thing to basically like get my feet out of the sand. Like I had to like pick up my feet, and it kicked up a lot of stuff, but now I can walk and now I'm free. But there's a lot of discomfort with some of the things that I'm talking about within communities that I've been a part of, and friendships and family that I've had. But I'm okay with it. They can talk about it with their therapist. That's what I say. Like I'm like, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Like I had to start talking about this stuff.
At this point, Semler would take a break from recording to go on tour with one of their heroes. So if you haven't heard about it, here's the story of how Semler got to open for Reliant K. We were talking about Christian bands that meant a lot to us growing up. And I know that you like Reliant K, and so do I, and you got to open for them. So what was that experience like? How did you even get in contact? Are you still friends?
Yeah, it was one of the highlights of my whole life, I will say. The guys were so kind and welcoming, and their fans were as well. And I'm really, really thankful for that experience. Felt like a prank the whole time. I was just so happy. The way that it happened was around the time I was putting out Queer Christian Cover Band on TikTok, which was like a series that I did where I would cover Christian songs and then invite people to duet. So I'd leave like a blank space in the song, and then people could reclaim some of the songs that we grew up with. And I think somehow one of the covers was Be My Escape, and it got on the radar of actual Reliant K.
I'm giving up slowly. I'm blending in so you won't even know me. Apart from this whole world that shares my fate.
And then one of the guitarists DM'd me on Twitter and was like, love the cover. We'll have to like bring you out on the road sometime or something like that. And I was like, he's so silly. Like they're so crazy. And then the next thing I knew, a mutual friend was like, do you mind if I share your email with Matt Thiessen? And I was like, am I in trouble? What have I done? And then the next thing I know, he was inviting me to open for them on tour. And
Amazing.
they were just really the sweetest, and we've stayed in touch. I got lunch with John Schneck, or breakfast with John Schneck, like last week while they're in LA. Anytime any of them come through LA or I'm in Nashville, we'll hang out, and they've just been really like so supportive. And I can't express enough how much it would mean when I was like in the process of figuring out that I was queer, that I was different. I used to listen to a lot of Reliant K, wondering kind of like, would these guys hate me? Like, would they think there's something wrong with me? And to have that just emphatically, um, denied, of just being like, we love you for who you are and we support you, and we don't know everything, but we're here to listen, and we just want to support you. And we're not saying that we don't need to make a whole statement on gender. We're not giving a PowerPoint presentation, but we're here for you. Can you help us grow? Was just the best. And I'm really, really thankful for that example from them and their friendship ultimately.
Although they are super modest about their success, I will sit here and brag on Semler for a little bit because it's my channel. Some of the biggest artists in CCM have kind of given their seal of approval to Semler, and it's pretty fucking awesome. For one, John Foreman of Switchfoot kind of sort of affirmed gay people in this TikTok. It's amazing.
All Switchfoot has always seemed like a really loving and kind band and group of people.
Hey Grace, how you doing? I'm so honored that you came to our show last night. I saw your story, wanted to respond and tell you, yes, I support your rights and freedoms. I want you to feel loved and supported. I want you to feel treasured, valued, and seen. I want all love and joy and beauty and truth for you. Love and embrace have always been central to our story and our song. We need our differences. I'm so glad that you were there last night. In fact, it breaks my heart to think that you would not be accepted. Let me correct that. You and your journey and your story are welcome at a Switchfoot show.
Holy shit, how are you not freaking out? There was also the time that Lecrae said something. Shit, I mean, even Kevin Max, a fan of the channel, by the way, said he liked Semler. So, like, if you're not on this train, you better hop on, okay? We're going all the way to the fucking top. We're going to the Dev Awards. Oh, maybe not. After the tour, Semler came back in a big way with their third EP, Stages of a Breakdown, which talks about a lot of things, but one of the main themes is this friendship breakup. And I'm sure we've all been through one of those. They're oftentimes worse than a romantic breakup. They wrote several songs about this situation, the main one being You're Not My Friend.
Thank God I know this bullshit isn't love, 'cause you're not my friend, my friend. And I think you fucking know it, you're embarrassed and it's showing. You're not my friend. Yeah, you talk your shit in private, I go public, you don't like it. God is amazing, and your church is crazy. Fuck off to your worldview and scary bad values.
I would
Bad
like to talk about a song called You're Not My Friend.
Yeah. I wrote that song in the shower, which is actually a place where I do a lot of songwriting. Really convenient because I can't write anything down. And I was going through something pretty rough with a person I love very much. And I kept hearing from them how much they love me and they are always my friend despite certain beliefs and views that they needed to express to me. And it was just really frustrating. And I am actually a pretty non-confrontational person, which is odd because of the position I found myself in. And also I think Semler, as a bit of like an alter ego for performing, is like, did you wanna say this to them? and Grace is like, no. And I sent it to my buddy Zach, who's a producing partner of mine. And initially it was kind of like pop punky type of delivery. And he was like, this is really cool and we can go that direction if you want. And he's like, but I think the lyrics are so pointed that we should kind of give it this Beach Boys sweet, like saccharine sweet type of a treatment. And that's the direction that we ended up going in. And I'm thankful that that song exists because I needed to write it in the moment that I did. And in many ways, I knew that I was by releasing that song, I knew that I was potentially, oh, this is going to make me sad, burning a bridge pretty seriously, but I needed space. And I really did feel that at the time. So I'm happy that that song exists because I think it's valid, and I understand that people will go through that too, that you need to like have your like petty moment. And I needed that. I needed to vent because honestly, up until that point, every conversation that we'd had that was so hurtful, it would always end up with me being like, I'm sorry and I love you. And I know that that's a thing that people in my position have gone through as well, where you're like, why am I apologizing? But I love this person. So it sucks that like you feel like you have to do this. But I think with You're Not My Friend, it was a little bit of me being like, we have to end this cycle, because it was something that was going on for a while. And I knew that by releasing that song, I was ending the cycle.
And at the time of the release of this video, the single that Semler is promoting is I'd Show Up, which is the spiritual successor to You're Not My Friend. And you can even hear by the titles how their perspective has changed on this situation. And yeah, it's just very Christ-like.
'Cause if the sky was falling down around your house and the curtains up and no one is around, if you ever feel alone and out of touch, I'd show up, I'd show up. And when the history books of us are said and done, but the night aches and you need someone, say the word, babe, you know that I'd run. I'd show up, I'd show up.
Now, what I will say is that there is a bit of a sequel to that song coming up on my next EP.
Hey.
With the beauty of time, I have come to feel differently, but I want to like, I'm happy. That's what I mean. Like, I'm happy that song exists, because there should be a place for those feelings too. Now, as time has gone on, I do feel a little differently, and I can only communicate with this person through song right now. So my life is very weird, and I wanted to put out a sequel, just sort of like, hey, I'm crazy. That was crazy. But also, just in case, here's this. And I've played it for people who know the situation. And my one friend was like, that's really sweet that you feel that way now. Just so you know, like, that's never gonna happen. Like, once you release You're Not My Friend, like, you're done. And I was like, okay, that's fair, but maybe it would just be like a little post-credit scene.
Yeah. Look,
Anyway,
I can tell
we'll
them.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell them that was a moment of weakness, whether or not that matters to them. I don't have control over.
And even now, Semler is blessing our ears and souls with more amazing music. So just this year, they've already put out Faith, Same Lover, and of course, Show Up. And I talked about this a little bit in my other video, but I just wanted to once again give you the good news that in June, during Pride Month, Semler got the #1 song on the Christian charts. It is a lot harder to get a song up there than an album. So, not to take away from their other accomplishments, but I'm saying, like, there ain't a damn thing that they can't do, okay? I am just so elated and proud and just, oh, yeah, like, this is a huge win, and you deserve it. You deserve it, Semler. You're incredible. I can't believe that. That's amazing. Like 3 fucking times? Unfortunately, it wasn't Lauren Daigle this time. It was Chris Tomlin that Semler knocked off, which is also, like, he's a huge fucking deal. But it would have been nice to have a rule of 3s with that, little trifecta, if you will. Kind of like my series, Vacation Bible School of Rock, which has 3 parts. Seriously, please watch it. I'm begging you.
God is good and able, and our God is flipping tables at the mess of love we made, but I still have faith.
really caught me off guard the first time I heard it, because I almost got kind of angry, because I was like, how have I never heard this before? How is this the first time in the year of our Lord 2023, the first time I'm hearing a Christian on record musically try to rectify their continuing faith through all this trauma? I'd never heard anything like it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm really proud of that song, and it was a labor of love with myself and my co-writer Jax, who also grew up in the church as well, and she really challenged me to take that song where it ended up.
And side note, you'll hear them reference the Dove Awards in this clip, and if you don't know, the Dove Awards are like the Christian Grammys. And the situation was, despite being an independent artist who got themselves to #1 twice in 1 year on the Christian charts, they were not invited. And Semler did apply for the Best New Artist Award, and they were denied without giving a specific reason why. So we're just going to have to assume it's for the reason that we think. That just goes to show why we need artists like Semler in this community. But anyways, long story short, they bought tickets to the Dove Awards and just went on their own, which is very punk rock.
I wrote it in line at the airport after the morning after the Dove Awards, and I had really complicated feelings about some of the things I'd heard and the people that I'd gotten to speak with and the rooms that I was in. But I sometimes when I have a feeling that feels pretty raw, and it's becoming a song, I don't always like to live in it for very long. I sort of write it and I'm like, it's done, bye. Like because for me, that's the catharsis of songwriting, is processing something that's complicated, maybe unpleasant. And then the catharsis is like, once it's done, and the song is written, at least in my mind, I feel this freedom from holding that burden anymore. And I kind of just wanted to do that with faith. I was like, I just kind of feel a little weird and a little gross and unsettled, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I wrote this song, but it didn't have a chorus. And Jax was like, and I was like, maybe it doesn't need a chorus. Like maybe it's done. Like let's just stop writing it. And she was like, you should write a chorus and finish this and record it more than just what's on your phone, so that we can release it. I think that might be the full life of this song, because some songs just live on my phone forever and they don't go anywhere. And I'm really thankful that she challenged me to tap into like you're saying all these verses, but like what is your chorus? Like what do you want to share? And I have this frustratingly persistent faith and a degree of hope that sometimes I really wish I didn't have. I think that I'm very jealous sometimes of my friends who didn't grow up religious, because they don't have this worry, and everyone has their own worries. It manifests in different ways. No one is free from, worry. I understand, but sometimes, especially after the Dove Awards, I just felt so like, what am I doing? Like, why am I still here? Like, why am I still trying to reach these people? Is this even possible? And I think, being honest with myself, I know that this is my lane. I sound like a youth pastor, but I do feel to a degree called to be talking about this. And I'm still wrestling with it in my music. And I just wanted to be honest about where I was. And that's like, I still have faith and I don't know what I'm doing. And I certainly don't know what y'all are doing, but but here I am. And maybe it's okay just to say that I'm still here despite it all, but where the fuck are we going? Like, what is the plan?
In their very limited spare time, Semler can be found spending time with their aforementioned lovely wife Lizzie and their family dogs in their LA home. They are still plotting out ways to inject queer realness to the world of Christian music, and I suspect they aren't done expanding the boundaries of that space yet. So here's one last clip. I will see you all next week. Remember to stream Semler's music. Go follow them on every social media possible. Leave a comment. Buy some merch. And just spread the love. And stay blessed. Stay gay. Drink water. Here we go. What would be the thing that I need to promote around that time?
I have an EP coming out. I can tell you the name of it.
Okay.
I have an EP called Night Aches that's coming out hopefully like
Cool
July,
name.
early August. And I have a tour coming up this October. that I'm really excited about.
Well, yeah. Everybody do that.
So that,
Um,
yeah, do that.